Hello and welcome to the Breaking Muscle Podcast, where we bring you interviews with the professionals who are agents of positive change in the health and fitness of their communities. I am Pete Hitzeman, managing editor at BreakingMuscle.com, and your host for today's show. The rules of eating well aren't complicated. We all understand the basic principles of portion control and macronutrient ratios, but for many of us, creating meals based on those principles just doesn't work with our busy schedules. After you work and train and sleep, and heaven forbid spend a little time with your friends, who has time to weigh and measure all the ingredients for a week's worth of meals? And even if you did, then you have to find the time and the know-how to create meals that you don't have to hold your nose and choke down. That's where Ben Canary comes in. He's the co-founder of HercuLean Meal Prep in Indianapolis, where he creates and prepares macro-perfect meals for anybody trying to look after their health and athletic performance. Ben talks about how the constraints of cooking for improved body composition enabled his creativity in the kitchen, where he's built a menu that will not only help you progress toward your goals, but keep your taste buds entertained, so you won't feel the need to go out and ruin all your gains with cheat meals. He details the evolution of his business from cooking for just himself and his brother to opening their own retail location, where his clientele now includes everyone from competitive athletes to the morbidly obese and busy professionals to hungry college kids. We also discuss the problems of mixing dietary strategies, how he uses technology to demonstrate the effectiveness of his service to his clients, and how his strategy is to become fit by consumption. If you like what you hear every week on the show, please help us get the word out by heading over to iTunes or Stitcher and leave us a rating and a review. And as always, we want your feedback, so if you have any comments or questions, shoot them over to editorial@breakingmuscle.com. Joining us this morning on the Breaking Muscle podcast is Ben Canary. He is co-founder of HercuLean Meal Prep, which is a brand new retail business in Indianapolis offering curated macros, prepped meals for anybody who's trying to train and get where they want to go, but they just don't have time to spend all that time in the kitchen to do it right. Ben, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks.
So I was looking at your story on your website, and you and your brother was a bodybuilder, is that correct?
Yeah.
And you're a chef. Are you like a classically trained chef like we found you in New York and you came back to Indianapolis, or?
No, I'm a chef that, out of necessity when I was in undergrad and I had like $50 a week to make last for food, the only way to do that is to start cooking yourself. So I started cooking when I was like 17, and my dad is a phenomenal cook. He's taught me a lot, and then I've just learned a lot through experience, and I love it.
So you didn't take the ramen noodles and dried chicken breast route in college like everyone else did then?
No, I didn't. I'll tell you what though. I actually think that being a classically trained chef would actually kind of inhibit you from doing what we're doing, because we go outside the box and look at ways that we can cook without oils, and we're a very low sodium diet, and I don't think any classically trained chef would ever be able to cook a dish without adding salt to it, so it's just we look at things a bit differently.
Yeah, for sure. It's a very particular style that I don't think anybody's teaching. It's like there's not really a podcast school, right? Maybe there should be, judging by some of the podcasts I've had to listen to. But so you guys, a number of years ago, your brother came to you and said, I need to lose a bunch of weight for a show, or how did this whole thing kick off with you cooking for?
No, so actually I was the brother that needed to lose weight. So my brother, he was like, when he was in high school, they used to make fun of him because he would he'd be like eating steak out of a tinfoil wrapper during English class, because he had to like eat at specific times. And that was back when bodybuilding was a lot less popular. And he competed for about 10 years, and he won some pretty large regional shows, and he was just, I always look up to him, he's my older brother, and he was always the big guy with the abs, and I went to grad school and college, and I cooked food, and I didn't really keep exercising as I got older, and so I ended up, when I was in great shape when I was young, but by the time I was 29, I was really overweight. I mean, I couldn't put my socks on if I already had my pants on. You know what I mean? Like, I was unable physically to put on socks if I was partially dressed, and there was a time I remember where I was in New Jersey, and I was at one of those water parks, and I was like the only guy there who had his shirt on. So like I went to the water park and I kept my shirt on, and that was a bit of a low point for me because when I was growing up, I was like, when can I take my shirt off? And so I reached out to my brother. I said, look, man, I got to make a change. I'm going to start working out again. What can I do to get your diet? And he said, it's simple. Just measure out like this and that. And he showed me exactly how to prepare the food.
So was he still training and competing at that time when you reached out to him?
No, he competed for 10 years I guess he was probably 17 until he was 27.
Wow,
and
okay.
when we started, he's 33 now, and we made this company a little over a year ago, and I started doing that before. So he's like 30 or something. He'd gotten a little bit overweight. So at the time when I actually moved in with him and was preparing all of our food together, he was going around to Starbucks and he was eating those protein bistro boxes like 7 times a day or something like that. And it was really expensive and the nutrition wasn't really there. But that was the only option that he had to be able to attempt to eat in a way that was like what we're doing now.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely a wasteland out there if you don't have time to do this stuff yourself. One of the thing that my wife and I are always laughing about is that if we get behind and don't get the meal prep done on the weekend, then our options for the rest of the week are basically Chipotle or Chipotle, and even then you're rolling the dice on which like half-stoned teenager is making your bowl, whether you're gonna get what you ask for or not. So he told you, look, dude, eat the chicken breast and eat the rice and measure it out, and you're going to drop a bunch of weight. And you did. What was kind of your reaction to the change in the style of eating from what you were used to?
I mean, I got really into it just really quickly. I used to be a trumpet player, and I got into psychology because I was into the psychology of creativity. And one of the things about creativity is when you add constraints, then you can actually it allows you to be more creative, easily. And in jazz music, that's like here are kind of the chords, and you have to play within those, right? Well, when suddenly I'm trying to cook really great food, but I have these constraints on these are the proteins you can use, these are the types of carbs and the amount, and here's a whole list of things that you can't use, and suddenly I'm forced to try and find things that I can use to add flavor, and I got really into it.
How was he eating when he was training? Was he doing the very typical, like, your handful of rice and your 6 ounces of meat and just the same boring thing every day? And he was like kind of cool with that?
Yeah, his diet was like egg whites and oatmeal every morning, and then he had a few different meals, and everything he would have to weigh it out, and a lot of it was chicken breast that he would sometimes just steam. And then his ground beef, he would get one of those like HercuLean pounds of ground beef and just put it on George Foreman and just like press it down. No seasonings. And he would use mustard. Mustard was his only seasoning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, because mustard is just like, it has some salt in it, but it doesn't have any calories really.
Yeah.
So, and then he would have protein shakes, Beverly International, UMP.
Yeah. Mustard and a pound of ground beef, and yeah, that sounds familiar.
And then I remember every time after he got done with his competition, he would just pig out. He'd get like
plow.
He'd get a cheesecake. He'd get like everything that he'd been craving for the past 6 months even, because he would diet for a long time.
Yeah.
He would kind of go wild on. And that was another thing when we created this like menu of 23 different items. We want it to be sustainable to the point where once you get off, you're not just going to immediately have to go to all the restaurants in town and eat everything that you feel like you've been missing out on.
Yeah, that's one of the things I always get a chuckle about is my friends will sign up for a whole food 30-day something or a paleo 45-day the other thing, and then the day after they go to Cheesecake Factory and just plow like 30,000 calories of everything, which, I mean, I don't blame them. Cheesecake Factory is delicious, but like you're not.
What's the point?
Yeah, you're not creating a lifestyle for yourself.
Not a lifestyle.
So you lost a bunch of weight. He lost a bunch of weight. All your friends are like, okay, guys, we need to know your secret. How did this evolve? When did you guys turn the corner into making this a business?
Okay, so first it was me and Nate, and then there were he has a construction company, so it was like all the construction guys got on, and it was funny because they started like quitting smoking and like quitting drinking pop too. And
Wow.
everyone around our circle just started getting healthier, and then it was guys at the gym, so we would go to get our workout, and I'd be bringing meals to the gym, and then I remember very clearly the first client we had that wasn't a friend. That was, I drove like over an hour to deliver this guy his meals. It was like Indianapolis is very spread out, and we were all the way on the northeast side, and he was in a city that's like southwest of Indy called Mooresville. So I drove all the way down there to bring him his meals. Yeah, it was just to the point where I was spending like 6 hours in my brother's kitchen cooking just for our immediate acquaintances.
Hmm.
And everyone was like throwing in on groceries, and it was just this very weird thing that was happening that was taking over his house. So he said, "Look, man, you can go back to grad school, or we got to shut this thing down
Wow.
because this is ridiculous." And I thought about it, but I've always had that kind of entrepreneurial spirit, and I was
Mhm.
kind of like, let's go for it. I want to get in the best shape of my life, and I see that there's a real demand for this, and I want to see where we can take it. And so we jumped in, and there was a process that took about a month for us to get our health department licensing. So we had to like rent a commercial kitchen and get the insurance. As soon as we were like legally able to sell food, our first month we did $10,000.
Holy moly.
Yeah, and that's with no marketing. I mean, to
Yeah.
this day, I don't think we've spent any money on advertising or anything. It's all been word of mouth and
Yeah.
social media. Yeah.
Well, and you're in a good spot. Indy is a growing city, and fairly affluent, so there's a bunch of hustling young professionals who are looking for exactly what you're providing. It's definitely
Yeah.
the right sort of city to have that opportunity.
I believe it would work anywhere where you have an average American person who's a little overweight and wants
Yeah.
a solution.
Who is your average client right now? Like, obviously, you guys are getting ready to open a retail store, and we'll touch on that in a little bit. But
Mhm.
talk to me about like who's your client base at the moment?
We really have just the biggest range. I had a rep for some company that was in, and we spent an hour at my store last week, and he was just like, "Man, this is ridiculous." Because in the space of an hour, there were the full range of age, like very, very young, very old, and then you've got they're really fit, like competitors that use us for convenience. They're like your business people that are very busy that use us for convenience. They're your very, very overweight people that are just like desperate for a solution, and we help them just quickly lose fat. And pro athletes and everything. I think our core target market is just anyone who wants to lose some fat, and that's like 33% of the population. I mean, in Indianapolis, 33% of the population is actually obese. I was obese, so I know what they're going through, and the process that it takes to become much healthier is really not that hard, and food's the biggest part of it. So we really feel like we have a great solution for them.
Yeah, I think that last part that you touched on is enormously important and often missing from people who are trying to help other people change their lives, right? Is that identifiable piece. Like I started off overweight and a pack-a-day smoker and everything else, and just sort of
Mhm.
incrementally over time figured out how to make my life a little less miserable. And so having that experience of being on the struggle bus and eating stuff you don't want to, and being hungry sometimes, and being sore and doing dumb workouts in the gym you didn't know what you're doing, like being able to share that kind of identifiable experience, I think is going to be part of changing the culture to where it's not 33% of your whole city that's obese.
Mhm.
Um, so the style that you guys have set up with your menu is a very bodybuilding style of eating, right? So take us through kind of the concept behind the nutrition and the meals that you've created for what on your website looks like just absolutely fabulous food, and I haven't eaten breakfast yet, so it looks even better.
Yeah, so there are a few real fundamental concepts, one of which is meal patterning. So we're all about eating smaller meals frequently throughout the day.
Mhm.
And the main reason for that is to prevent insulin spikes,
Mhm.
blood sugar spikes. So it's like You have a certain threshold with your blood sugar. If you intake a big meal all at once, it'll raise your blood sugar, and then insulin will get released by your pancreas, and it can store that kind of excess glucose as body fat. And when you eat small, frequent meals throughout the day, especially when they are complex carbs with tons of fiber from all the vegetables, you don't get that blood sugar spike. You don't get that insulin release that's, storing the carbs as fat. So that's one thing that we're all about, is a lot of fiber, small meals with complex carbs. And then the other thing is it's a high protein diet. So what we want to do with all of our clients is have you build muscle at the same time that you're losing fat. And this is because muscle is the biggest factor when it comes to your metabolism. The more muscle you have, the more calories you're burning throughout the day. So the way I look at it, just simple and plain, is the more muscle you have, the more you get to eat.
Right,
So,
and that really is the goal, right? Yeah.
well, because you have these other diets, right? It's called a hypocaloric diet, right? Very, very low calories. So you have these people that are like, say they're 400 pounds, and they get down to like $180, and they have this dramatic transformation, and then 2 years later, they weigh, 450. They weigh more than they did before. And what happens is on a very low calorie diet, you're losing both fat and muscle. So as you're going through the transformation, your metabolism is actually slowing down because you're losing the muscle. And then the crazy thing is you go back to a normal diet, you start eating like a normal person again, the weight flies back on, but you lost both fat and muscle.
Mm-hmm.
But the weight that comes back on the easiest is just fat. So
right.
you have this yo-yo kind of a pattern where you go down, and then when you go back up, your body composition is even worse off because you've got a higher body fat percentage. And what we are aiming to do, if you saw my before and after, it's you don't just lose fat, you build a lot of muscle at the same time. And I mean, I can eat pizza and ice cream 3 days in a row, and I'm not really going to gain much weight. My metabolism is much, much higher than when it was when I started. You can go back to eating like a normal person and the weight's not going to fly back on.
Well, and crucially, you can eat pizza and ice cream 3 days in a row because the other 27 days you're eating like high quality stuff. There is definitely a tipping point, if you will, where you can't get away with it forever. But like you're saying, once you've got your body and your metabolism kind of working the way God and nature intended, then you can get away with what I call nutritional transgressions a little bit more often. Yeah, so like I was saying, the bodybuilding style of eating small, frequent meals and large proportions of protein, scientifically proven to work for most people most of the time. The carbs that you're getting, it's not a low carb diet. It's not even really a low fat diet, although I did see that like it's egg whites and you trim some of the fat off the meat, but like there's still going to be a pretty healthy proportion of fat in there. Do you guys work with clients who use a different style of eating, like 2 meal a day kind of guys or stuff like that?
Yeah, we run into so many different things. I've actually found out about a lot of different things. I will say this. I think that if you take our meals and our philosophy and you mix it with something else, you're not likely to get as good of results as if you would just go full bore with what we're talking about or full bore with what you're doing anyways. For example, if you got like a ketogenic diet, right, and then you add some of our meals in there, it might kind of change things. You might not get the results you're looking for. It might be like too many carbs for you or something like that, right? And with our meals, they're not huge. If you start doing intermittent fasting and only eating a couple of our meals and doing some like 2 protein shakes, and you can end up losing muscle. We're not really paleo. Actually, all of our meals are gluten-free, and I think, I love grain. Brown rice helped me lose so much weight. So when I have people come in and they're on Whole30 or something like that, and somebody like a chiropractor has told them that grain causes inflammation, I'm usually like, look, don't you think that like 70 pounds of excess body fat that you have is worse for you than even if this brown rice is going to give you a tiny tinge of inflammation? Like I'm telling you right now, if you incorporate brown rice into your diet, you can lose all the weight that you want to. And so basically what we have is what we think is the best, healthiest way to build muscle and lose fat. And if you are, operating with a nutritionist who's had you on a different program, sometimes our meals are appropriate to work within that framework, and sometimes they're not. But you don't want to go half and half in two different styles of eating. Two different styles of trying to get in shape by eating.
Yeah. So have you guys thought about creating like parallel menus? Like, here's our paleo menu, here's our bodybuilding, our original style menu, here's our Whole30 menu. Like, that would be a whole bunch of work, and you need about 5 more cooks, I think. But
well, it's actually not so simple. It's actually not just the amount of work of cooking them. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes to roll out a new meal for us now.
Okay.
It would be different if we were just cooking in my brother's kitchen still, But yes, those are in the works. We are certainly looking at a low carb line, like a keto line with high fat and a little bit less protein. And we've discussed a paleo line that may come in at some point. Other ways we're looking are just specific diets for certain kind of like disorders as well.
Well, I mean, the ketogenic diet started as a treatment for epilepsy. It was never about body composition. Yeah, it was started, I think it was in the 60s. They started using it as a treatment for epilepsy, and it's effective. Like, it helps a discernible percentage of people stop suffering from seizures because of some changes that it has to the endocrine system and stuff. So
Awesome.
it's fascinating. The whole thing, nutrition as medicine thing, is completely fascinating to me, and especially as someone who was raised not eating mindfully, I guess you could say. That's not true. I was raised mindfully, but the only thing I was mindful of was clearing my plate.
Oh, yeah?
That was required. And that was just, that was the culture of the time, right? In the 80s, like, you ate mac and cheese and, fish fillets, and you finished your meal because your parents were raised by people who grew up in the Depression, and so that just culturally sort of carried down. And now we're only now realizing, the diseases of abundance, where everybody has way too much of everything all the time. So we're having to kind of change how we deal with that. The inflammation point you raised is something that's kind of funny to me, because we don't really understand the mechanism of inflammation in a systemic sense very well. Mm-hmm. Inflammation is just the body's way of dealing with an issue. It could be a good or a bad thing. Like, one of the things they discovered is that people who take NSAIDs, anti-inflammatories, for long periods of time, they're inhibiting muscle growth, because inflammation is the thing that your body uses to make more muscle. You damage the muscle inflames, it heals, gets bigger and stronger and faster. So
I should put down the ibuprofen?
Well, I'm in my mid-30s now, and things hurt, and I take my NSAIDs when I need to, but I try to take them less than I used to, just because I'm more cognizant of sort of the unintended consequences of that. So where are you guys getting all this food, right? So you guys have to source a fairly significant amount of food to ship out every week. How do you guys go about getting all of the kinds of particular ingredients that you guys use?
So we have a number of different suppliers throughout the city. There's like one of them will come by with a truck, and they'll drop off the vegetables, and then we'll go somewhere else for the chicken, things like that. We don't use any too exotic ingredients. Like, our tomatoes are San Marzanos, so they come from a specific part of Italy, but for the most part, we're using ingredients that you would use if you were cooking at home, So a lot of it is just we go through kind of food service purveyors, and we try and find the ones that have the highest quality produce, who are the most consistent.
How much of your job is more than cooking, but education of your clients?
Well, the majority of my job, I would say about 60% of my day, I'm interacting with clients. And some of them don't need education. Some of them are just, they already know what they want, Mm-hmm. When you sit down with somebody, and we have this machine that's called an InBody 570,
okay.
And it is a body composition machine.
Like a bioelectrical impedance kind of thing?
Uh-huh. Yeah. So when someone comes into the store for the first time, it can be 30 to 45 minutes with them, talking about what they're already doing, what their goals are, going over their InBody, and it tells a story, and it's different for everybody. So you have to interpret that, and then create a goal or a plan for their goal, and then we'll see you next week. And then if things don't happen the way that they were supposed to, then you got to find out why.
Like, for instance, they're, eating all 6 of their meals before 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they're really hungry.
I haven't seen that one. Yeah, I actually haven't seen that one. Sometimes they will eat less than they should. Sometimes
Okay.
people tend to just think that eating less is going to help them lose weight faster.
Right.
So a lot of time you see people saying, well, I wasn't quite hungry enough, so I actually just went down to eating 1 meal and then 3 protein shakes. And you're like, that wasn't the plan. Why would you do that? And then you put them on the InBody, and it turns out they lost a little bit of muscle. And so you have to say, look, sometimes eating more is really what you need. That's why we have this thing. It's the newsletter. It's called Fit by Consumption, and it's like this idea that like you're eating yourself into shape.
Yeah, I think that's a crucial concept for a whole bunch of people, especially women, to just put the food in your mouth and trust it. It's going to
Yeah.
be okay.
Yeah.
Because we have this diet culture, right? And it's, it goes all the way back to Jenny Craig and Weight Watchers in the 80s, like when you and I were kids.
Mm-hmm.
That was how you did it, was, oh, you only get this much, and if you get more
Yeah.
than that, then then you're going to get fat. And it's a very good business model for them because they just keep people coming back because they keep staying fat. But it's not helping people actually learn how to, like you say, eat. I don't want to say eat to perform because I think that's trademarked, but eat
Mm-hmm.
to fuel their bodies and give it what it needs to give them the results that they want. One of the things I'm fond of telling people when they come to me for advice is pick the athlete you want to look like and then do
Yeah.
what they do. Like, if you think gymnasts have great bodies, or if you think, Olympic weightlifters or CrossFit athletes or basketball player, whatever, find out what they do. And to a certain extent, I'm not saying you can train like they do, but to a certain extent, follow the pattern of what they're doing, eat the things that they eat, get enough sleep, which is like, that could be its whole own podcast. And, don't eat like an idiot. It's not too hard, but what is hard, as somebody who works 60 to 70 hours a week, is prepping the freaking meal, and that's where you guys come in. So how does this pattern work? Do people just come in once a week, pick up their stuff, and it's all pre-containered with instructions and go home, or how does it work?
Yeah, that's kind of close to how it works, except it's not quite just, here are your meals, now get out. You know? But yeah, so people usually pick up a week's worth at a time. We actually partnered with a company that has a giant flash freezer.
Mm.
And so our meals, as soon as we cook them, they're frozen. And so they stay good for longer than a week, much longer, like a year. One thing, a lot of meal prep companies, it's not much different than just going to a restaurant and getting takeout. And it's like they're supposed to be good for a week. But when's the last time you ever went to a restaurant, got takeout, and looked at it 5 days later and were like, yeah, that's good. It's crazy, right? So with our meals, most people, due to like space requirements, they pick up a weeks at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And they come in, they hop on the InBody. It tracks your results from last week, week to week. And so we look and make sure you're progressing toward your goal. We've got a ton of other products in the store too, like protein donuts, monk fruit sweetened ice cream, noodles made from beans, tons of different snacks and pasta sauces, and we have a sauce wall. So it's like
Oh, wow.
10 different sugar-free barbecue sauces, 10 or more completely salt-free sauces. So there's a lot of value to just stopping in the store and looking at what's new and getting things other than just the meals. And for the most part, people, when they come in, they're progressing toward their goals. So it's like, cool, we'll see you next week. Keep up the good work. And if they're not, then we sit down and try and troubleshoot.
How often do you change things up on the menu? Do you like introduce just one new item at a time, or do you sometimes just go through, like, we're redoing all the breakfasts, like all the breakfasts we're getting rid of and we're doing those again?
Yeah, so when we started out, it was this just creative storm where it was like every time we were in the kitchen, I was coming up with something new. And then over the course of about a year, we found the things that stuck, things that people requested more of. And that just kind of by itself just got ironed out into this menu with 23 items on it. And my vision is a bit like Starbucks, where they got every fall, the pumpkin spice latte is coming. We've got like the gingerbread latte and the
Right.
whatever, right? So we're gonna have seasonal meals that we roll out, and you can expect them. Like I do this thing with pumpkin. Pumpkin is a fantastic low carb, very low glycemic kind of like carb alternative. So I do a chili garlic pumpkin cubes, and then that's with just chicken breast and broccoli, shredded chicken. And then I do this other thing. It's called a curry doodle. So it's a daikon radish that we shred into noodles. So it's a doodle, and then it tastes really great when you roast it with curry powder.
Nice.
So those are two things, and I think we'll do a mashed parsnip meal as well. Those are like, late fall root vegetables that we can locally source. And then I think we'll do a white chicken chili in the winter and some other things like that. So yeah, we've got our stable and then seasonal and local, rotating menu.
Nice, very nice. I feel like curry powder is kind of the most underutilized seasoning in anyone's kitchen. Like you can really make things suck a lot less if you just know how to use some curry on it.
Not to mention there are so many different curry powders.
Yeah.
The mark of a quality curry powder is if you can see little curry leaves that are kind of like small little pieces of curry of a leaf. It looks a bit like a bay leaf.
Okay.
But go to an Indian grocery store and find a bag or a container of curry, and if it has little chunks of leaves that look like bay leaves in it, that's the one you need to get.
Nice. Learn all kinds of stuff today. What about snacks? Like, so you're eating 5 times a day, which sounds like a lot, but people love to snack. Like, I'm the kind of guy, I do a whole bunch of reading because I have to. And I have such an easier time concentrating if I have something to snack on. So it's usually like plantain chips or, a small cup of mixed nuts or something like that. Do you guys supply any of that, or do you just like give people advice on what to snack on? Or
it's funny because a lot of people get tripped up when it comes to snacks. You start diving into, if you have one chip, you're probably going to eat the whole bag, And it's even if it's something healthy like almonds, sometimes you'll eat way too many almonds and you just got too much fat. We have a lot of snacks at the store. I just found out about something called a lupini bean. Have you ever heard of that?
I don't think I have.
It's really cool. You got to check it out. So it's like Roman warriors used to eat this bean, and it's got very little fat, and it's just protein and fiber. So one serving will have like 7 grams of protein, 7 grams of carbs, which is all fiber, and like 1 gram of sugar. Or I'm sorry, 1 gram of fat. It's a bit of an acquired taste, but it's a snack that you could eat all day and would never, ever, throw you off. So I think you need to kind of look at the person and see, are they going to be able to responsibly snack? And if the answer is yes, then try some of the things that we have. Or like there's a grocery store around here that sells almonds that are prepackaged in certain portions. It's called like just a handful of almonds, and it's like 2 pounds, but it's all in little packets. And things like that I think are very helpful. But like my buddy Hugh, who has lost 50-some pounds so far with us, when he asked me the very first day he got on, he said, I'm at Walmart. What kind of snacks would you recommend from here? Knowing Hugh, I just said, I would not recommend snacks from Walmart. And we just kept him just eating the meals.
Yeah.
And he's lost 50-some pounds so far.
Nice.
And he's doing great. So sometimes snacks can throw you off.
And the idea is to get rid of your psychological dependence on always having something going into your mouth too. So one of the things that I found really helpful, you mentioned like you can definitely overeat almonds in a big fast rate because they're super dense. Everybody eats like salted almonds. That makes it really easy to eat a bunch because it makes, you mix the salt with the fat and your body's like, it rewards that chemically. So just eat like raw salted or raw roasted almonds. That's it. Like just don't. If you don't get the salted ones, you're less likely to eat them addictively because you're not stimulating that part of your brain. So that's something that I started doing because I'm the kind of guy like I'll get a bag of like, because I like Brazil nuts a lot too, so I'll get a bag of like mixed nuts from Whole Foods and I'll just plow the whole bag like sitting at my computer. I'm like, I just ate 9,000 calories. That can't be good.
Yeah.
So I started getting the raw ones and I'm like, oh, this is a lot easier to be like, yeah, I'm done eating this. I don't need to have any more of that. So what's the vision of HercuLean Meal Prep? Where are you guys going? You've gone from your brother's kitchen to a commercial kitchen, and now you've got your retail store that I think is opening today?
It opened yesterday, actually.
Okay, all right. So are you franchising? Are you shipping meals all over the country or all over the world? What's next?
That's a great question, and both of those are things we're kind of deciding and looking at right now. We get to choose the way we move forward, right? But really, the next step is in our community in Indianapolis, which has a 33% obesity rate. We want to bring that number down. We just want to do our part to help make Indianapolis a place that's known as a city that's seen a great increase in its fitness. You know, there was one study that said Indianapolis was the most unhealthy city in America last year.
Wow.
So we want to help change that. And then moving forward, if we're going to be nationwide shipping and direct to consumer, or whether it's a franchise or even a wholesale model, we don't know yet. We just want to, help people here, and we'll see what happens. This whole company is just kind of things fall into place, and that's how it grows. Like, it wasn't supposed to be a company, and then it just felt like what we should do. So I really have a feeling that something is organically going to happen, and we're going to grow along that path that is, it's got a life of its own, and we'll see.
Awesome. I love that, you're starting just trying to change your community around you. I think that's what's missing from a lot of the talk about health and fitness in the country is everybody wants to look top down. Everybody wants to, what federal policy can we enact that's going to get people to be, well, really, what are you going to do for your buddy? What are you going to do to help change the 10 people closest to you, or the 15 people closest to you, or the people on your block, or the people in your city? What are you going to do to change that community? And if everybody who knows something about how to get this done does that, then this problem solves itself. So I love that you're looking close first before you're worried about going bigger. Ben Canary, where can people find you and your business online, follow your progress, and come find you locally in Indy?
Sure. So our website is HercuLeanMealPrep.com. Right, that's HerculeanMealPrep. I always have to tell people my email address, right? On Instagram, we're at macros.curated. And we got another one. We just landed at HercuLean. So I'm not sure what we're going to do with that one yet, but we got the name. And we're on Facebook at HercuLean Meal Prep. And in Indianapolis, we're up by the Fashion Mall on 82nd Street. Yeah, it's a great location.
I'm going to have to stop by and see you guys the next time in Indy. I'm excited to see what you guys are doing, and I'm hoping that either your company or something very similar lands in my area soon, because Lord knows I could use help getting better food on the table every week. Thank you so much for making the time. Good luck with your retail store launch, and we'll talk again soon.
All right. Thank you.